It's been more than a year since I started to make videos for this channel, and during all of this time, dozens of people wrote hundreds of comments about Russian colonization of Mariupol. And in this video I will talk about it. It's very hard to talk about such bullshit, but there are really many of these comments, and many of the Western media are also spreading this nonsense, so I think I have to. And before going to the main topic, I want to remind you that this channel is only sponsored by you, so if you like my videos, you can support me. Links are in the description. Now let's go to the colonization. I don't really know how the country can colonize its own land where its own people are already living. Colonize by developing it. By this logic, Soviet Union colonized Moscow, Germany colonized Berlin, and the Great Britain colonized London. It sounds very funny. Even Ukrainians' policy towards Mariupol was more similar to colonization, removing our native language, suppressing our culture, aggressive propaganda which I faced everywhere, pathetic attempts to make a Russian city a non-Russian city. Maybe once I'll make a video about it. And there are also a lot of comments that Russia is replacing local people with immigrants, forcing local people to leave, and I want to talk more about it. First of all, Russia is not forcing anyone to leave Mariupol. All of people I know who are currently living in Mariupol are local and lived there before war, just like me. Information that Russia forced someone to leave city is completely fake and it doesn't even make sense. And also I've met a lot of people who came to Mariupol from different places to help in reconstruction, but I never met personally anyone who moved in Mariupol to stay here. Despite there are such people, and there will be much more of them in the future, but now it's very hard to find people who moved to Mariupol to live here. But I will talk about it later in this video. Before speaking about Russians and Ukrainians, I want to talk about the Asian workers. A lot of Muslims arrived from Middle Asia to work on the construction sites. And of course Ukrainian and Western media are claiming that these guys will settle up here and make Mariupol an Islamic city. And maybe they even have a point, because there are a lot of problems with migrants, but government tries to control the situation, and I don't think many of those migrants will stay here, because most of them aren't even Russian citizens, they don't know Russian language, and in their countries they have families who are waiting for them. So they will leave Mariupol when it will be completely reconstructed. And after all, was there any way to make a reconstruction of such a big city without them? There isn't enough local workers and aren't even enough Russian volunteers who are ready to help us. So it was the only choice to invite these guys from Middle Asia. Most of residents left Mariupol in 2022. Half of them fled to Russia and half fled to the West. But most of these people returned during 2022, during 2023, when it was really easy. Anyone could return here from Europe. But in November 2023, Russia closed its borders for Ukrainians, and the exception is airport in Moscow, Sheremetyevo. To cross the border there, Ukrainians need to complete a lot of checks, like questionnaires. It's hard for many, and it filters Ukrainian supporters quite effectively. And in my opinion, it's really good, because most of people who didn't return are pro-Ukrainian radicals, and they aren't welcome here. They hate us, considering us as traitors, and most of Mariupol and Donbas citizens hate them, considering them as traitors. We don't like them, and they don't like us. They had opportunity to return, and if they didn't, we don't need them. Pro-Ukrainian media also crying about their apartments and houses being nationalized, but I don't see anything bad in it, because they don't like Russia, they don't want to live in Russia, so why do they need an apartments in Russia? And local people can easily confirm the ownership on the apartment or private building with no problem, just like all of people I know did. Russia also didn't force anyone to get Russian citizenship before recently. Ukrainian passports worked just as Russian ones. I completed Russian national exam with my Ukrainian passport. But now Russia is finally recognizing Ukrainian citizens as foreigners, so they can be deported to Ukraine. I assume this could be called a colonization, if there were at least half of pro-Ukrainians, but there aren't, and there weren't even before this war. Most of people either neutral or pro-Russian. I would say only 10 or 20% are pro-Ukrainian, including those who left, and less than 5% if you count in only those who stayed. Now let's talk about the Russian colonizers. There are people in Russia who have decided to move to Mariupol to live here, and there are enough reasons for this. Nice climate, especially compared to Siberia. It's also easy to find job, especially on construction works, and the government really cares about this city. There are also some tourists, like I've met a Buryat couple when making one of my videos, and they asked me to take picture of them. Russia and DPR are officially planning to make Mariupol a resort city, so this is the future. And I also want to tell once more about mortgage apartment buildings. Russia is no more building free apartments for people who lost their housing, but instead a lot of big, beautiful and unfortunately very expensive buildings. Local citizens who live in here have a preferential rate, 2%, for mortgage, but still most of apartments bought by people from other Russian regions. Of course, people with brain issues may call all of this a colonization, but obviously it isn't. Western people can't understand that this war is almost a civil war. We all speak the same language, have same names, same culture. A major part of Russian army consists of Donbas people, and we are fighting against our ex-compatriots. People in Donbas hate Ukrainian state much more than people in any other Russian region. And as I said many times, the only difference between Russians and Ukrainians is hate towards Russia. Since I consider myself Russian, I am Russian, despite my ethnicity, which is 100% Ukrainian, or the fact that I was born in Ukraine. I'm Russian. And this is why I prefer to live in a city with new Russian residents instead of old pro-Ukrainian ones. We are all the same, but Ukrainians hate a lot of things that are forming a Russian culture and the Mariupol culture, and Russians aren't. And also, migration of Russians from other regions is the only way Mariupol can become better than before war, because despite around 60% of pre-war population survived and stayed, it still isn't enough for development. That was all I wanted to say about colonization. Now I'll talk about this channel. In next 2 months I will make an overviews on big DPR cities: Melitopol, Berdansk, Volnovakha, Severodonetsk, Lugansk, and maybe some more. I will announce it with more details a few days later. Most likely I will need your help. And I also will make few more videos about Mariupol because there are a lot of new things to show. That's all. Have a nice day.